talk about the everyday. First of all, kids. We have 3. And last year at this time, we had a 1-month-old baby. As you can imagine, or you know yourself, you're on little to no sleep. We had also been out of practice. It had been 6 years since our last baby. It's kind of like walking through sand, this heavy sand. You're so exhausted. I had also been struggling with nursing and had gotten mastitis on top of it, which, if you don't know, is like having a seriously bad case of the flu. I also, as he said, am a small business owner, have clients who have expectations because it's the real world. So at this time last year, it was just going through the motions of life. My husband working, me trying to work, getting the kids ready, doing things just as every parent can ever imagine, paying bills, just going through trying to survive, and kind of not doing a great job at it at that time because we were on little to no sleep. About 3, I want to say, the baby had had a couple of rough nights of sleep, and we were on probably about 3 hours of sleep total between my husband and I. We were literally zombies. I remember physically feeling so exhausted that I could barely even hold my baby. And my husband got up for work, just like any other normal day. I don't remember if he said goodbye or I said I love you, but I do remember thinking about this often after what had happened. He left, and I just went about my day as usual. Later that day, I had the baby wrapped around me, and I was trying to get ready for dinner, and I noticed he came home from work earlier than usual. And he said something happened at work, and I didn't really pay attention because life, right? And I just kind of kept moving. And he said, something serious happened at work. And I said, okay. And I could tell his tone was different. It felt intense. So I stopped and I looked at him, and I could tell in his eyes that something serious happened at work. And I said, what happened? He said, I went to take a drink of water, and I was on Skyline Drive, and a 20-ton truck ran away. If I hadn't taken that drink of water and stepped aside, I wouldn't be here right now. I would be dead. My heart stopped. I said, what? He said, literally, I would be dead right now if I hadn't stepped aside to drink that water. It saved my life. I was like thinking of all these things, like we just had this baby, we have 3 kids, we have a house, all the logical things that anybody would think about. And I said, oh my God, I'm so glad you are okay. I'm so sorry that happened. And he said, I'm okay. It was really scary. So later that night, he wanted to go to his cousin's house. They wanted to watch a boxing match, and I was like, yes, go, please, because of the stress that had happened that day. I wanted him to have a break, and so I just went on with our evening with our 3 kids, just like any other evening, getting them ready for bed and nursing the baby as usual. Everyone was kind of winding down for the evening, and it was about 10 p.m. or so, and I got a phone call. That really scary phone call kind of in the middle of the night that you wish never happens? That's the call I got. I answer the phone, and it's actually my husband's number. So I say, hey, babe. And I hear, is this Kim? Is this Brandon's wife? And I was like, yeah? What's going on? Stop messing with me, because it was my husband's number, right? And he said, is this Kim? His tone tense and deep. Is this Brandon's wife? I said, yeah. Is he okay? Is he alive? My heart dropped. I already felt sheer panic. And he said, your husband, Brandon, had a grand mal seizure. I said, what? He said he fell and he had a grand mal seizure. I said, is he okay? And he said, I don't know. Hold on, I think he's coming to. What I didn't tell you is that my older brother had also died of a grand mal seizure. So that trauma, compounded with not knowing what was happening with my husband, put me in sheer panic. I said, tell me what is happening. I'm here with our 3 babies. I don't know what to do. He said he wants to come to you. I said, okay. I called my friends. They jumped into action, literally showed up within our house within minutes to care for the kids. I took my husband to the ER. I held his hand. He looked so different to me, kind of separate. I held his hand and I was playing all of those scenarios, especially as women that we do, right? Like, this is it. The other shoe has finally dropped. He has a blood clot, he has a brain aneurysm, he has a brain tumor, because our minds go to the worst case scenario, right? And that's exactly where my mind went. I held his hand and I told him everything was going to be okay. But in my mind, I was actually planning his funeral. I had been down this road before and I was terrified. I was asked to go in the waiting room while he had to go through a battery of testings, because if you see him, he's this amazingly strong, healthy man. And even the doctor was like, this is really odd. But as I waited in the waiting room, all I could think about was our life, that we had just been living in this cycle of press and repeat every single day. Getting up, caring for the kids, paying the bills, going to work. Getting up, paying for the bill, over and over and over. And I thought, is this the life that we want? Is this the life, if he's okay, are we going to just continue or are we going to change? Because I really, in that moment, felt like something had to change. So from that night, for the coming weeks, he had gone through lots and lots of testing. The doctors couldn't figure out what happened. They put him on heavy anti-seizure medicine, and life as we knew it literally stopped. There was no more chaos because he was no longer allowed to work. He was no longer allowed to be alone, ever. He had to shower with the door open. He was no longer allowed to drive. Life literally just stopped. I was probably the most stressed out I have ever been. And I was like, here. I said, we have this pause. It's a forced pause. So we sat at the table, and the first time in many, many years, and I held his hand, and I looked at him, and I said, what makes you happy? I didn't know how to answer, and neither did he. So we just talked. I said, I know this sounds silly, but believe it or not, the best part of my day is when we're cooking together. Whether it be breakfast or dinner, you and I in our small kitchen, just making something for our children. It brings me a lot of joy. I love cooking. It feels like it's my heart. And he said, you know what's funny? That's my favorite part of the day too. And I was like, could we make something out of that? And he said, what? And I said, I know this is going to sound crazy, but what if we started a food business, a catering business? He said I was crazy. It didn't just come out of anywhere. Him and I have been working and cooking together for over 13 years. And I've been wanting to be a chef for as early as I can remember, but as any of you know, that the food business is a hard business. So anytime I talked about it, everybody always talked me out of it. It's too high risk. Food business is risky business, is what everyone would say. And I said, but for us, we could create it the way that we wanted. We could create it out of our love for each other and our love for our food and our love for our children. We could use the ingredients and resources from our own people, from our own communities, and teach people about food as well. And we talked about what that dream looked like. And we started to think that this could be a reality. So we started down the path of creating something beautiful. And one of the first steps that we did was we met with our friends and our family. My dad, he's here, was one of our biggest advocates. And it was nice because we had the capacity to think about not just in today, but in this moment of why not? He couldn't work, my husband couldn't work anyways, and he was considered a liability, so I'm like, let's do it. Let's take this calculated leap of faith and create something out of this horrible situation. So we got our friends to talk to us about food and what a food business would look like. We started dreaming and creating, and we started writing a plan. And in that plan, we created the steps that we wanted to take in order to be successful. And we launched Etiquette Catering on February 1st of this last year. And we've been very successful since. And it feels amazing to take the leap of faith to say, I want to share my heart with the world. I want to share my food and create something out of something that was so hard. And reality is, we'll probably never know what happened that night. It could have been the trauma of him almost dying. It could have been us on so little sleep, just pure exhaustion, the combination of both. But what I knew for sure was that was a blessing in disguise. That was a moment in time where he and I could see each other for the first time in a long time. That we could look at each other and we could see each other for who we are, naked and vulnerable. Because sometimes it's incredibly scary, even with the person that you are most intimate with and that you love the most, to share your dream. So in that pause, most people panic. I know I did. But what I'm asking of you is if that pause happens, and trust me, you can take one much less dramatic than ours, but when that pause happens for you, whether you create it or something natural happens, that you relish in it. That it gives you a moment to reflect on your life as a whole, and to think about what actually brings you joy. And if you don't know the answer, talk to your friends. Let them help you figure out what those answers are. I've been in small business development for the last 13 years. And over that 13 years, I can tell you from the jump who I know will be successful and who won't. And every single time, it has nothing to do with money. Every single time, it has to do with someone's passion for what they're doing. Their connection to say, this is what I want, and failure is not an option. That's something I definitely know. And when we went through this process, I've thought about it all the time. Because creating a food business is hard work. And anyone who tells you different would be lying. It is challenging, but I love it all. I love meeting with our farmers. I love meeting with our meat producers. I love creating our beautiful plating. I find so much love and joy in the details. It has created a lightness in my heart and in my love for my family. And every single day I wake up, I look at my husband, and I look at our beautiful 3 children, and I'm just completely filled with gratitude. So if ever you're faced with mortality, all I ask is that when you look back at your life, you live a life that you're proud of. I can say that for me. Wopila.